Good morning and welcome to our Speak Easy. Welcome back, everyone. I can't believe that we have April waiting for us and ready to unfold. This spring, we connect in our hearts as we plant some new seeds of intention and really raise our awareness for sexual violence and child abuse. I'm very humbled to host such a show today and really recognize some of the survivors and pay tribute to some of the strong, brave, courageous warriors of our life that walk through each day and show us all how to stand tall within their light and to survive. And as they survive, to make a difference, to be a game changer and to be a difference maker. I welcome a very dear friend and sister. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, good morning, everyone. Joanna, first and foremost, thank you for having a safe space where we can all talk, share, and learn from one another. I think growth is so important, and spring always reminds me of that renewal. I'm Courtney Osteen, and I'm one of Joanna's friends that we had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago. And I've had the privilege of watching you in so many different parts of your journey. And you've always been so inspirational to me. So I'm happy to share this space with you.
Absolutely. And, you had mentioned something that is really, really important to hear. And that is that we are creating a safe place. And, one of the toughest things for me in my journey was just having safe spaces and people that I could trust to talk to about some of the things that were coming up for me, some of the things that I was experiencing as a mother, as a survivor, as a woman, and as an adult. And even though there were things that perhaps have occurred to me along the way, as in my childhood, even in my adult walk, as we process things daily, we're also being fed with a daily dose of life, right?
Sure.
So it's not just what had happened, and then we get to feel that and process that. But it's what had happened that we're feeling and processing as it unfolds while we're experiencing the new components of life. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, when I stepped into the role of being a mother and seeing life through the eyes of my children, it really, really became a non-negotiable space for me to not talk about things anymore. It really became a non-negotiable space for me to continue to just be the way that I was, because that's how I was taught, or that's how I was raised. It created a non-negotiable space for me that I knew that I was given a chance to do things differently because I got to parent children. And I knew that I wanted to make a difference in their lives and be a game changer for them. So yeah, it's really awesome to create a safe space with beautiful souls like you that we can talk about things and feel things together, so that as we're doing that, we're healing ourselves. We're letting go of things that might be entrapped within our hearts, under our surfaces. But then we also give a great opportunity for people to listen and to hear and be like, oof, yeah, I feel that. And oh, yeah, I've been there too. So I'm sure you can relate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So much of what you say resonates with, especially when you become a mom, right? There's so many things that you say, oh, that can't be on their plate. So we won't talk about that. We won't share that. We'll leave that part of us behind. But I found, at least through my own journey, until I was living that authenticity of what it was like to be a survivor of child abuse, I couldn't be the best parent.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So for me, I had Kaylee when I was young. So I was a 19-year-old mother, and my pregnancy didn't get to seem exciting. And that's not because anybody made it feel that way. I made it feel that way for me because I held this amount of fear and this amount of shame of being so young and being pregnant, right? I was just another statistic. I was this fresh out of high school, met my boyfriend, who happens to be my lifetime sweetheart, who I'm fortunate enough to have shared my journey with. And he has encouraged every step of my growth, no matter what season I was in. And trust me, some of my seasons were really, really ugly. um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I was this young mom, and I kind of crashed my husband's high school party. He was a senior. I had already graduated, and we dated for a year, and guess who ended up pregnant? And
Yeah.
I mean, I knew how it worked. It wasn't this new concept, but
Right. Right.
here
Right.
I am pregnant and having a child. My sister-in-law, oddly enough, was pregnant at the same time I was. Our daughters are 1 month apart. And everything seemed so exciting and like they were celebrating this great moment. And I felt ashamed. I
Mm.
felt ashamed and worried that I would screw up a kid and they would end up just like me. And I thought God had put something on my plate that maybe I couldn't handle.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, He gave me exactly what He knew I needed. And
Go
my
figure.
daughter is this exceptional young woman who is not only incredibly smart, but she's witty and fun, and she has the biggest heart, and she's probably one of the most empathetic people that I've ever met. And I just look at her and think, oh my God, like you are
Made
incredible.
that. Yeah.
You are incredible. And I got to
Yeah.
be part of that. I mean, what a cool gift. But when I was a young mom, I did everything to sabotage it, everything to sabotage it, everything to sabotage my marriage. And I had so much self-loathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't deserve that type of happiness. And
What
why would
was the root of that?
it was how I grew up. And the way that my dad treated my mom was just so secondary, and it was just not worthy. And that's how he treated myself as well. And, you know, I wasn't a boy, so that was the first mistake. I mean, I can't control that. That's
Right.
not the cards I was dealt. You know, God created me to be a woman. And
Right.
as I got my voice, I realized He created me to be a very strong woman that could help others
Indeed.
heal. But God,
Indeed.
it took so long to get to this place. And the journey, though, when I look back and I put together the pieces, I'll say, oh,
Mm.
that's why that didn't get to happen then.
Yeah.
Or, oh, that's why that did happen then. And I look back at that 19-year-old mom
Yeah.
running away from her husband, like literally running away from her husband, and my husband driving beside me, God bless his heart, on the road. Please get back in the car. Please get
I've
back in
been
the
there.
car.
Oh, God.
Because
I've
I
been
had run one time, Joanna, I had run out of our apartment. I picked the fight with my husband. I picked the fight because I always said, we're going to get a divorce. And he goes, why? And he goes, I didn't marry you so we could get a divorce. And I said, but that's what you do. You get married and you get a divorce. And I said, he
That's
goes,
what you saw.
yeah. And he said, no, that's not what we do around here. And I said, well, I mean, it's going to happen. So I'm going to call the shots, because I thought at least that would be my power.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, I understand that. And that is the the trip, literally. You're tripping yourself up,
Mm,
fear and
yes,
worry that, well, it's going to eventually happen. So I'm going to do it before it happens,
that's right.
just to save myself from maybe any pain of someone doing that to me. Right. I,
Yes.
I can relate that. And that's the one thing I've really been talking a lot with parents and moms, and really understanding where the seed of abuse starts. And
Yes.
a lot of people are like, no, I've never been abused. I'm not in an abusive cycle. And I really believe that I don't know that I've ever met anyone that hasn't. I think different degrees of abuse are prevalent in people's lives. But I do think it starts from something you had mentioned, watching.
Yes.
Watching you, for you, it was watching your father talk to your mom. And
Absolutely.
you learned from what you saw. You learned a cycle of abuse.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And it
that
was verbal.
reach.
Oh, yeah. It was verbal. It was mental. It was physical. So to this day, I'll share something very intimate with you. I'm terrified to be overweight because my dad used to call my mom a fat, fill in the blank, B. So I remember hearing those words and attaching that emotion, right? And then
Yeah.
having a reaction of what that looked like and meant. So
Yeah.
every stage in life, if I would gain a little weight, I thought, oh my God, that's what that's going to look like. That's going to sound like. And I found myself apologizing in my marriage, being pregnant, gaining weight, body completely changing, looking
Oh,
completely different,
yes.
and apologizing. My husband going, that's not even something I ever thought of. I think you're
Yeah.
beautiful. You created
Right.
life. Look how amazing your body is. Like, he looked at it in such a different way. And I thought, who are you? Like, why
Yeah.
are you so kind? Why are you so loving?
Yeah.
Why is there, and there was never an ulterior motive. And I mean, the poor thing, for years, he went through this cycle with me. And it was like, I constantly wanted to dump everything that I'd ever experienced on my plate on him, because I wanted somebody else to know what it felt like. And he just sat there with grace and said, work through your season. Work through your season.
Well, and sometimes, I found myself testing people, you
Yes.
know, just because expecting that they're not going to pass the test. And I'm just going to, whip that cycle out at them and throw that weapon over here, and we'll see what they're made of. And, that's that self-sabotage technique that kicks in, that prevents us from ever having that closeness, being loved, and getting our needs met. And, you know, when we talk about what we watch, what we view, it's interesting because my greatest, what would the word be? My greatest moments of healing, perhaps, would be as the observer.
Mm.
And now, because I spend so much time um, self-loving, putting my oxygen mask on first, taking care of myself, and knowing that because I do that, I'm able to have the grace and the connectivity and the love and the support to give to others in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Learned that until I do that, all I'm if I'm not taking care of myself, right? And I don't, even if it's just take a time out to take a nap to reset, and I'm not in a good space and I continue to force forward, all that happens is I'm using the tools from my cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I project and deflect all this fear and energy that is coming up from my cycle of abuse, from the things that I watched growing up. And so I've learned that when I, take a time out and I observe, I can see myself in it,
Mm-hmm.
going, oh, there that is, Joe. Take a few steps back, go take a nap, go take a walk, find
Yeah.
find an ally, a safe place to talk to, let it out. But until I step into that space of understanding myself, I spin in that cycle just like everybody else. And that's why it's so important what you had said, to watch. Not only do we see behaviors when we're young, when we're children, that's when those seeds are planted, but it also can be the seeds that we get to plant today
That's
that
right.
change us, that become who we are, that become our stories today. So when we look back at those things that we once saw, those things that taught us ways that we were not cultivated enough. You know how they say, like,
Mm-hmm.
a child's brain isn't fully matured until what, 20, 22, 26, 20, years old. And that brain is still developing habits, routines. Its receptors are going off in certain ways, that it's developing their patterns and their survival techniques. Their fight or flights are kicking in, right?
Yes.
So when we're young and we're just observing this behavior, it's almost like we're collecting habits.
Mm-hmm.
We're collecting wardrobes for outfits that we haven't even had an opportunity to wear yet. You know what I mean? It's like, when you go shopping and you buy a bunch of crap that you don't even know what it's for. It's like we're shopping, we're collecting all these things and we don't really want them, but they're in our bag. They've been given to us from, some people that we've watched through life. And then we get put in relationships. We get a job. We get, roles like parenting, or, something happens in our life, and we're like, okay, I need some tools to survive. And we go in that bag. And instead of being the things that we've learned from our self-love and from the graces of our own authentic heart, we end up
Yes.
using other people's tools to get us out of those jams. And
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I've used some of the things that I've seen and they don't work for me. They've made things worse. I was raised in a very abusive environment that showed up in the face of love. So, it was because I love you. I yell at you. If I'm not, don't say anything, it means I don't care. So, criticizing and yelling at each other was just the way that everyone communicated in my house. And when we celebrated things, we celebrated, by toasting, so people then were drinking. And then when they were drinking and they were telling each other how they felt, it was communicated even more aggressive. And the
Mm.
layers of the cycle just kept ramping up. The volumes kept turning up until it wasn't fun anymore. And there was a fight. And then
Sure.
when people got into a fight, it got aggressive. They would be throwing things or really yelling or using words that were just, you couldn't take back, that were remembered forever.
Sure.
And it was a matter of time before someone physically got hurt. And it
Mhm.
always was. It always was. It was an abuse, a cycle of abuse that continued to loop to the point that I remember my brother and I would just see it and we would be like, I'm out of here. We'd go to our rooms or, you would dodge that bullet.
Sure.
So as a young girl watching that, I think I learned how to be adaptable.
Hmm.
I learned how to be a chameleon,
Yeah.
learned how to be a people pleaser.
That's
I
right.
knew I knew how to walk into a situation and assess the mood and being like, whoa, I'm not going to mess with mom today, or I'm not going to, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And that's how I dodged and weaved through life.
Hmm.
And that stuff comes up too, because you're also learning to not talk about how you feel.
That's
Because if
right.
you do, it's going to cause a fight. And if it causes a fight, you might get hurt. You
Hmm.
don't want to get hurt. So let's just avoid. Let's avoid and let's deny.
Right.
And that only lasted so long because I was such a emotional little bloom that as I started to blossom, my energies, like you, became a voice that wanted to share and
Hmm.
wanted to help people. And as I became a mother, oh my goodness, and an advocate for my own children and myself, that took turns in my life that became non-negotiable. It wasn't an option to not talk about things. But
Right.
yet the people in your cycle of abuse, they really, really turned up their volume enough that we don't talk about things that happen in our family.
That's
We
right.
don't, we don't, that's not loyal.
Oh, I'm writing a book right now, and I know you have published yours. And there's sometimes things that I feel you have to talk about completely raw and authentic in order for it to help somebody in the best way. Because I have read books authored by people that I know and love, and I know they're not sharing everything.
Mhm.
And like, you give a little, but it's not enough to help the person who truly needs to know what that moment felt like. And everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
But if you cut it off right at the moment that it can embrace, impact somebody else's hurt and help that hurt heal, then you may as well not even wrote it down on paper.
What does that mean to you exactly? Give me an example of how you could tell something fully to help and support someone.
So for me, I remember in the early stages of writing my book, I thought, I'm not going to include that because my mom's alive.
Yeah.
So that could hurt my mom.
Yeah, and I
I'm
get afraid of that. That fear
I'm
still
not
comes up.
going to include that because maybe my dad's family will read that, and then that will have a negative effect on my family. Maybe they'll seek revenge, or they'll be angry and they'll trash my family name, or you know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
I had this deep, long conversation with God, and he said, if you don't write your story, how it happened, how will you help other people be where you are today?
Mhm.
And I thought, wow. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write it exactly how it happened. And if it hurts people, that's because they haven't healed from it. And that's not on me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you and I both know there's a lot of work that you have to do in healing.
Oh yeah.
And
And
when
if
it gets
ever
really and uncomfortable, it's so easy to say, "Ooh, that's enough. No, thank you. I'm going to put that right back on
put
the
that
shelf.
away.
We
Yeah,
will
let's
see
put
that
that away.
again. Actually, let's put it way back in the closet and shove a box in front of it and then
Tight
put a
lid.
balloon over that so then we don't have to see it when we open the closet. We know it's in there. But now it's like, yeah, open that box up. Let me see your shit. And
Mm-hmm.
excuse my mouth, I kind of swear like a
Oh,
sailor, but
this is a
see.
speakeasy.
Let
Speakeasy.
me see behind your curtain. And it's not so you can go, oh yeah, I knew she wasn't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's so you can know I'm not
You're
perfect.
not alone. Yeah.
I'm
And
far from this image that I play, for 5 seconds on Instagram. I'm just real. And
right.
I've always felt when I had become in the phase where I felt like I was healed and I could talk about it openly. And oddly enough, it was a pageant director who told me, I don't think you're ready to talk about that. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, why? And I was so defensive. And she said, because you can't tell your story without crying. And
Mm-hmm.
she goes, and it's not that you're just showing emotion. She goes, you can't speak. That's
Mm-hmm.
how upset you've become. And again, I left with my offended hat and I was so pissed off and march away from that room. And how dare she tell me that I'm not healed? And how dare she tell me this? And I thought, it took years from that conversation
Yeah.
to really hit me and go, God, she was so right.
Well, I mean, it's not, you know, first and foremost, I just finished a training, a trauma training for, I'm about to start a journey to work for a refuge home for women that are coming into a safe home refuge from human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And this training that I just finished was such an eye opener because they spoke about the word coercion, cohort, to coerce someone,
Mm-hmm.
and to really push someone to say something or do something before they're ready. And a lot of times in the world of healing or the world of survivors, I personally see a lot of people saying, share your story, say it out loud, do this, do that. And yes, there is going to be a lot of people out there that can and will. And
Sure.
we need that. But there's a lot of soldiers out there that may never.
That's
And
right.
it doesn't mean that they're not healing or they're not good enough survivors. Goodness, if it did, then we're just bullying them, right?
Yes.
So it's not about bullying survivors to share or to be a certain way, but rather to meet each other where we are in our journey
Mm-hmm.
and to just know that we're all right where we need to be because whatever we are sharing in that moment, it's exposed to others that are in that same space too and need it too.
Sure.
And speaking your story is a step, but there are so many steps in healing
Mm-hmm.
that transcend, transform, that push you back, that push you forward, that tuck you in, that pull your pockets out, you know. And healing, it's not as if you just heal and then you're healed.
Right.
Do
I
you know
think
what I
that
mean? It would be like saying, like, I went to the gym, I'm in shape. Ta-da! You know what
that
I mean? Wouldn't that be awesome? No, you got to go to the gym, and in order to stay in shape, it's a lifestyle, it's a lifelong journey. So for me, I feel like being a healer is because I'm always healing with people. And a lot
amen.
of people say, what's a healer? Do you have to get a certain, like, what's a healer? And I'm like, someone that feels and that speaks their truth and connects with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And as we heal, as we all work as little healers in our journey, we're becoming more and more, and it becomes our lifestyle. We're feeding that healing cycle. We're feeding it with more details every time we take a few steps forward. And goodness, I share more of my story every day, a little more and a little more. It didn't all just come out at once, you
That's
know?
right.
And I'm so glad it didn't, because when it did, I can relate. I probably was a blubbering, crying, hurt little
Sure.
girl. It's those details, they don't feel good, and
Right.
they don't paint a pretty picture. Whose does?
No,
But
it doesn't.
nonetheless, I think that when we share it, we realize, sadly, abuse is a lot more common.
Hmm.
And I think more than anything, it's women like us that share what we do. We show commonality
Yes.
and the desire to break that norm.
Yes.
Once upon a time, I called it a barrier. Yeah, it's a barrier, but it concerns me more that it's become a silent norm
Hmm.
in people's households
Sure.
than people are willing to admit, because they only want to think of abuse as being this, you know, dramatic thing they see on TV.
Hmm.
Abuse, as we all know, is that subliminal little fire
Sure.
that kind of spreads through your life, and it uproars, and it will calm, and people will come into our lives and feed that fire and make it, really explode. And then there's some people that'll come into the life and, bring it down and negotiate with that and massage it so that it's calmer
Mhm.
and more, easy to sustain. But goodness, if you don't feed it with things that are always calming its temperament, you can be in an uproar with it your whole life.
Sure.
And I think that, as we walk through our journeys talking about it, it's feeding the things that are simmering the
Sure.
fire,
It is, and it reintroduces thoughts and feelings, right?
absolutely. And
And
then
then
we get to change the language.
that's right. But I will tell you, had it not been for that conversation, and it's actually Janice McQueen, who I adore, who she had that conversation with me. Had she not had that in that season of life, I don't think I would have started to heal even more. You know what I mean? Because it was a lot of
Yeah.
self discovery. But again, I walked away pissed off from the conversation, and it took me so long to say, what does that really mean?
What does that mean? That's
What
right.
does that mean?
And then you got to observe yourself.
And I did. And then sometimes when you get to step outside yourself and observe it with somebody else, you go, oh, I've been there. I've
Yes.
done that same exact
Yes.
thing. I've been destructive with my relationships. I have ruined friendships. I have said, when this gets too uncomfortable, I'm going to walk away
Mhm.
because I was demonstrated that behavior, right? So it was like, you know what? If this gets too uncomfortable, I'm going to step up from this table. I'm going to turn around and walk away. And then I'd say things like, well, it's a Scorpio trait. That's how I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I'm wired. And I thought, or the excuse of, well, that's just how she is. I mean, who wants to be known as that's just how she is? I mean, and what does that mean? Does that mean
What does
she's
that
aggressive,
mean?
she's angry, she's explosive? What do those words mean? But just because, and when I talk to young women, this is what I always tell them, you don't get to control
No.
the hand that you are dealt in life,
Yeah.
but you get to control how you play your cards.
That's right. That's right.
And at different points in your life, you will not understand what power you hold in that hand of cards, right? But when you start digging deeper and saying, oh, this is why I did this. Oh, this is why I do that.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you stop and think. Those are such great and powerful things to be able to do, right? Stop the behavior, stop the language, stop the self loathing, stop the self doubt, and think, why am I doing this? What
Yeah.
does this
Peel
mean?
those layers back. Right.
Yeah. And how can I let myself have some grace? How can I experience what it's like to be perfectly imperfect?
Yes.
And how can I teach somebody else that those things are completely normal?
Yeah. And that what exactly what you just shared. You know, it's the process of self-regulating yourself.
Hmm.
It's the process of knowing that moment where you realize no one's going to come and get me and save me. No
Yeah.
one's going to come and change my life. I'm not going to get a phone call and be like, okay, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'm coming and we're going to revamp your life and give you a new schedule, turn you in the right direction, and I'm going to lead you to everything you need to do to succeed. No, did you ever get that call? I never got that call. I never,
Not
I
as possibility, though.
never. And I waited. I really did because I thought that that's what happened. I really, really thought at some point, I think it when I was like 19, 20 years old, you know, just in that college, you know, those college years, just waiting, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Everyone keeps saying, what are you doing with your future? I don't know. But here's what I've learned is that when you realize that you're never getting that call, and that not only are you not in control of what someone else does, and that you are in control of what you do, but then you get to be the conductor.
Mm.
And I think that that is one of the most powerful common denominators I see from survivors. And I've been studying healing and studying surrender and self love and self awareness for years because as studying this, it has helped me heal. It has helped me become who I am today. So I truly study it. And the one common denominator that I find with all survivors of, of, of cycles of abuse and not just child abuse or sexual violence or domestic violence, but all levels, they all have that root, right? Even people that are going through life through alcoholism or addiction or eating disorders, gambling, sex addictions, they're all forms of abuse.
Sure.
The root the root of all of that, and you hit it right on the nose, is started when they were young and they
Mm.
got to watch. They got to watch the people in their life as a young child, see how people interact. I always say, like, what do children see from their kitchen? You
Hmm.
know, when their family's in the kitchen and the kid might be in the other room or walking by, and we don't think our kids are listening.
Sure.
What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What are they witnessing? And I think that starts to implode until it becomes, a turn to us, right? And as we get older and we start to peel all that off and clean ourselves off because we realize we're not getting that call at 4 o'clock, no one's going to come and save us, right? But for me, I started to realize, like, okay, as I take all this stuff off and I get rid of all the things in my shopping bag that I collected, my tools to help me deal with life, I realize none of these things fit me. None of these things work for me, and I don't agree with any of them.
That's right.
So, I had to, and I went through an angry phase of my life where I was hurt and I was mad at my parents, and I didn't want to walk through life like that either. Anger wasn't helping me become. It was holding me back. It was engaging the fire. It was fueling the fear. So I had to surrender
Hmm.
and let go of things that I thought I knew and try new things. And you
Hmm.
know what happened? I entered this stage of vulnerability in my life and this self discovery in my life. And
Hmm.
I attracted more narcissists and sociopaths known to man. Why? Well, because they're really attracted to that light. People that are in hardship, in toxicity inside, people that don't want to talk about stuff, they love being around truth. They love
Mm.
on peacemakers because even though they're not willing to do it themselves, they want to experience that through as many people as they can because that makes them feel like they are, right? And
Yep.
so I found myself in a really probably the last toxic relationship of my life, I call it, where the abuse hit the ceiling, right? That game-changing moment in my life. And I had to look at that, like, how did I how did that happen? I was telling the truth. I was feeling my stuff. I was this. But we realize as truth, as emotional beings,
Right.
as people that are sensitive, we also have to create boundaries.
Yes.
Because if we don't create personal boundaries that are healthy, right? So you had mentioned there was a point in my life when I was sabotaging my relationship and I was,
Oh
dumping
yeah.
out. I was like, that's it, I'm leaving. Oh gosh, I've been the queen of runners. Literally, the queen of runners. I'm out of here. Forget it. Throw the table up in there and peace, I'm out. I'm gonna do this before shit hits the fan and
Oh yeah.
things get crazy. And I would see myself storm with that same fuel and energy that I watched as a kid. No different. No different. That was what I was channeling in those energies where I was pulling the rug out from the table and charging and leaving and grabbing all my stuff and running for the hills.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I had to learn through that is because while I thought, okay, I'm being honest and I'm sharing my truth and I'm sensitive and I'm vulnerable and I'm not doing all those same things, but as soon as it got scary, I was going right back to those same tactics that I watched growing up
Because
with.
it's comfortable. You know it.
But I was also attracting people that were not in their truth, that
Mm-hmm.
loved being around my truth for those reasons. But then when things got hard, that's when that abuse cycle connected right back together. And I
Right.
was feeding that fire with other people that were self-abusing themselves by not being in their truth, right?
Yeah.
And so my final I wouldn't even know the last straw for me where I knew the cycle was ending with me is when it affected my children. And I had attracted a relationship that was um, very similar to the emotionally unavailable relationships that I saw growing up, and really charged me with a lot of my fears that I saw growing up, but I wasn't going to talk about because instead I was going to be confident and I was going to be a riser and someone that overcame things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the right direction, but with the wrong person. I still wasn't able to see that I
Yeah.
was in an unhealthy relationship. And so it took seeing that unhealthy relationship hurt my child. I was in a relationship with someone that was very unfaithful and very demeaning, um, uh, similar to what you had shared that your father had done. Rather
Mm-hmm.
than using frames of body imagery, it was you're not confident enough. So if I ever questioned things that I was scared about or uncomfortable with, the person that I was in a relationship would redirect, get that energy off of him
Mm.
taking accountability and say, why are you being so jealous? You're so insecure. You need to be more confident.
Sure.
So that little people pleaser in me, that little girl that was hurt from when I was little, that
Mm-hmm.
never felt like she was good enough because we didn't talk about things, just went and tried to engage things in her life that made her feel more.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'll show you. I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go do that and I'm going to go do this and because that's going to show that I'm confident and I'm secure. So sometimes we trick ourselves into believing what is healthy as we heal. And I share that part of my journey because when I finally got myself out and I could then observe from standing back and
Mm-hmm.
I could see how that denial, even though I was in my truth to a certain extent, there was so much more truth I could be in
Mm-hmm.
that I wasn't because of the fear of not being secure enough and confident enough and right enough.
Right.
So when I got to a humble place of understanding what attracted that relationship, which were my fears, when I got to a place of understanding how that fear was affecting me, but then how it hurt and affected my children by having it around,
Mm-hmm.
right? By me being in a relationship with that person, my children, by, without choice, had to be in that relationship. Kind of when we were children, we had to be in relationship with our parents, not out of choice. That's just what God gave us, right? Those are the parents they gave us. So when I realized how all this was affecting, I knew that the difference in the truth that I was going to unfold now had to be full of boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I had to peel the layers back and understand why, but not return back, but to stay exposed in that why in a boundary. So that when I was around certain people that possessed that same character trait, like being emotionally unavailable, let's say, I didn't take the role of, I'm going to be more, I'm going to love more, I'm going to, you know, be the next superhero. Mm-mm. I accepted myself and realized, I'm enough
Mm-hmm.
and more than enough. And if this relationship or this experience with that person is hurting me right now, and this doesn't feel good, I don't need to continue to work.
That's right.
I don't need to explain myself. I already did once, and that's enough.
Yes.
And I don't need to continue to try to make this space work or to be a certain way. I don't need to do anything. I could simply just say, this doesn't feel good.
That's
This
right.
doesn't honor me and my truth. And I need to set a personal boundary, because if
Mm-hmm.
I continue to try, I'm going to eventually feed my abusive cycle
Mm-hmm.
and self-inflict doubt and concern and the I am not enough syndrome to me. And
Yes.
I'm never going to be fulfilled because people don't fill us. We only fill us.
Absolutely.
And in creating that personal boundary by just saying, I need a timeout. I need to
Yes.
press the pause button. And that might be forever for this relationship. And we might need to part our ways and just gracefully and with love and light say, this just isn't working, and move
Yes.
on.
Mm-hmm.
Or we just press the pause button on things and maybe put things on the shelf. And when Joanna, feels ready
That's
to
right.
show up, I will. And if I don't ever, that's okay. And I've
Yes.
learned that being truthful to what I can do in a relationship, not trying to do it all to prove that I can, even
Mm-hmm.
when sometimes I can't, because for instance, I could never be okay with a man that isn't honest and faithful and loyal. It's not negotiable for me. So for me
Absolutely.
to try to be in a relationship with someone that is and try to continue to be more confident and more secure, it's never going
Mm-hmm.
to happen. It'll be a lie, because
Oh,
that's a non-negotiable for me. And I know that. But I couldn't be honest. I couldn't be in my truth with that because I always wanted to be more.
yes.
So accepting myself for who I am today, and that is the one common denominator that I've seen and I've learned with a lot of survivors, is this epiphany in our healing where we realize that mm, the expression, no more.
Mm-hmm.
I no more need to try in a relationship for the sheer fact of being more confident or more. Um, the mores can go on for many you know fractions, um, pertaining to how many things we feel that we're not enough of.
Sure.
But when we feed the not enough syndrome, right? We never allow ourselves to become enough.
Mm-hmm.
So today, part of my practice as a survivor is practicing being enough, practicing knowing that my cup is filled enough for me today, and that when I speak with someone, it's enough. And if I'm
That's
tired, it's because I've reached my max and that's enough and I need a break. And
that's
to
right.
continue going, it would be breaking that trust for my own personal self. And I would push myself past something that would then enter that emotional cycle of abuse that would hurt myself and potentially someone else. And what I've learned through that journey is that by embodying being enough and loving myself and
Mm-hmm.
giving myself that 4 o'clock call saying, hey, girl, you ready? Let's do this. I save me. And that
Absolutely.
feels really secure. And I've found a whole new level of confidence and joy and love. And it's not in a relationship with anyone else but me.
That's
And
right.
I see that happening in a lot of survivors today. And I know that that is what reflects in my children. And I too, like you see in your child, see a child that has empathy. I
Yes.
see in my children thoughtful,
Yes.
considerate, genuine
Yes.
truth speakers that actually care about themselves.
That's right.
They care about themselves because they get to see a mom and a dad that has boundaries with each other, that
That's right.
seek a healthy feeding, levels of healing versus their abused child's inner child's. And we
Yes.
get to change the language for how we're speaking to ourselves, the people in our lives, and especially our children.
Amen to
And
that.
right, right. And that I know breeds a whole new cycle of intelligence and healing that has changed my world forever. And I'm still an observer to this day. I watch how people and talk to each other all the
Yes.
time. And I do think it's from our eyes, what we see, from our
Mm-hmm.
ears, what we hear, from our lips, what we say, that is changing the way that our lives are shaped today.
Absolutely. I always say, you have to look for the lesson in every bit of life, and sometimes that lesson comes much later, right? So
Yeah.
I tried to look at what I learned from my childhood, and I actually remember that moment of freedom. I was in my home
Mhm.
and I had to make a phone call that I did not want to make. I had not spoken to my dad for years. For
Mhm.
years. I had cut off ties and, put a major pause button.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
much to my chagrin, I had to push play again. I
Yeah.
was reached out to on MySpace, remember before Facebook?
Yes.
Be like this little tiny picture with a name next to it in your inbox. And it said Chelsea, and I thought it was one of my cheerleaders. And it was around the time where I was writing college rec letters. So I thought she's clearly asking for a college rec letter. Well, little did I know it was my childhood friend. And
Mm.
she was reaching out to me to let me know her dad had passed away. And she was letting me know because my dad and her dad were friends, very good friends. Some would consider best friends.
Yeah.
And she wanted to get a hold of him. And I did not have the heart to tell her I hadn't spoken to my dad in a considerable amount of time. So I
Went through
said,
that too.
no problem. I will reach out to my dad. And I had to search for him because he had moved out of California
Oh,
and did not know any of this. So I called his shop, found out he didn't own his shop anymore. So then I received a phone number from somebody who then in turn, this crazy
yeah.
cycle. And I thought, I have to do this for my childhood friend. So
Yes.
finally I get a hold of him. And I mean, he doesn't skip a beat. It's like you leave off in the same exact spot. And he said, what do you need? And that's how he answers, what do you need? And I started crying because I love Jim dearly. And we called Jim Maple. That was his last name. And I said, Maple died. And I could barely say it. And he goes, what? What's wrong with your mom? And I said, no, Maple, Jim Maple, he's dead. And he paused and he said, why the F would I care if he's dead?
Ooh.
And I said, well, because he's your best friend. And he said, I told him to get the F off my land a few years ago, and I never wanted to see him again. And it just flew out of my mouth. And I said, well, I guess you don't have to worry about that because he's dead.
Yeah.
I said, I need you to remember Chelsea as a little girl sitting across the table from her daddy that she adored.
Hmm.
And I want you to remember that girl. And I
Yeah.
want you to remember that Jim. And I don't know what's happened, but I want you to do one thing for me and be a human being and call him or call her and say, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your dad was a great man.
Right.
And you can't say the latter, just say, I'm sorry for your loss. I said, I'm going to call her and let her know that you're calling, and then I'm going to call you back to make sure that you did.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do
And,
it.
and that's the whole thing. It's like, it's the script is flipped because now the
Yes.
child is coaching and parenting, the parent. And we as children, you are always, even though you're a grown woman
Mm-hmm.
and a mom and
Yeah.
a pretty amazing soul in our world, you're always going to be someone's child.
Yes. And this was our last conversation though. And that's why I
Yeah.
bring it up, because it was the moment where I was truly free.
Yeah.
Because fast forward in the conversation, he goes, well, what have you been up to? I said, well, I have another child. And he goes, well, aren't you a baby making machine?
Oh boy.
And I said, gosh, I said, both of my children are from the same man, and my kids are 7 years apart. So I'm not sure how that even makes sense.
Yeah.
And he paused for a second, and I said, maybe one day you could meet them. And then he reintroduced me why he couldn't. And he said, well, I don't think that's possible. I could never come visit you because you share a house with another man. And I said, that man would be my husband.
Hmm.
I'm very confused why you don't think you could come here.
Right.
And then he started talking about his stepdaughter and how wonderful she is and all of her accomplishments. And I said, maybe if I had a rich daddy, I could have graduated from USC too, but I didn't. I said, so here I am.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to tell you this because I need to tell you this for me. And he started interrupting. I said, no, you're going to listen because I've listened my whole life.
Yeah.
I said, you told me respect is earned. It's not given. I said, and you've earned nothing here.
Yeah.
I said, I'm your daughter. And if you were dying, I would come for you on your last day if you asked me to. And I would pray for you because I truly, truly believe in forgiveness. And I would come for you. I
Yeah.
said, but no, you have to answer to God, not me.
Right.
You have to answer about your choices, not me. I said, but I do want to thank you because you did teach me how I wanted to treat my children.
Yeah.
And you gave me a gift of knowing that's exactly who I did not want to be.
Yep.
I said, I'm a good mom. I said, and I tell my kids I love them multiple times a day and that they're valued and loved and respected. I said, and this will be our last conversation. I said, because I don't want to talk to you anymore because I don't feel good when I leave this conversation ever. So I forgive you.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I spoke to him. And my son was a few months old and now he's almost 14. And I haven't seen him in over 20 years. And it was the most freeing and amazing thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. It's when you release that cord that tugs on your heart, step
Mm-hmm.
into your own space. And like you said, you pick up your own 4 o'clock call and be like, Courtney, I got you.
That's right. Get in the
And
car, girl. Going on
yeah,
a road trip.
that's right. That's right. And boy, I really resonate and honor what you shared in that space of just, um, one of the most powerful things I had to accept in healing was when people tell you who they are, listen.
Yeah.
Tell you who they are, listen. And I always, I've heard it. I heard it many times during, therapy and healing, but it never really made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And because in my mind, I would think, oh, I'm going to love more. I'm going to be this, pleaser even more, and I'm going to help the situation. And my ego was convinced that I could be more and change the way that person felt and thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I really honor that you were able to hear what he said and hear what you said and acknowledge that that was it for you. That was enough. That
Mm.
was your own personal limit and boundary. And as much as that wasn't what you wanted or wished for, it was what was. And
Mhm.
in honoring and acknowledging yourself with that, not only were you able to release a cord and an attachment that, was just pulling on your heart, but to continue to step into that place of empowerment and realize sometimes our teachers come into our life, and it's a bummer because I think parents, we expect them to teach us these values in life that give us what we need to fly. Maybe
Sure.
maybe the movies teach us that, so we have these unrealistic expectations. But
Right.
as we all know, as parents, we don't get a handbook on how to be great.
No.
We've got to muster that energy. And I think experiences like, we're sharing give us that. And we realize that sometimes our teachers do not give us the wisest words, do not give us the best ingredients to work with,
Right.
but rather they give us ingredients that we realize, oof, this doesn't taste good. This doesn't
Yeah.
feel good. And
That
this
doesn't.
doesn't, I can't cook with this the rest of my life. This isn't working for me. And so, stepping into roles like being a parent, you realize, wow, I don't have to use any of those ingredients. And it's
Mhm.
because of what I saw, it's
Exactly.
because of what I learned, it's because of what I felt that I'm, in fact, not going to be anything like that.
Yes.
I want my children, I too, like you, I almost think that my kids are like, Mom, you're calling me again? Yes, Mom, I
And
know you love me. Yes, Mom, I know. You know,
good to
because
remind.
yes, because I know what I don't want to be.
That's right.
And to know that today, as someone that has survived abandonment and neglect and verbal abuse and emotional abuse, physical abuse and sexual abuse, alcoholism and addiction. I've seen all that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Never, I've never been any of it. I can't say that my cycle of abuse didn't implode and reflect. And I've had moments as a mom or in a relationship where I was like, oh, I don't want to be like that,
Yeah.
you know. But it took me having that experience for me to still be able to see and go, oof, that's not my stuff. I'm using someone else's tools that
Yes.
don't fit me,
That's right.
and I'm going to fix that one. And it wasn't from a place because someone was telling me I wasn't good enough. It was a self-realization.
Yes.
That made all the difference.
Oh,
And me
and
realizing, like, no, I don't want to be an abuser like I was abused.
mhm.
And I've had moments in my life where I was just like, Joanna, that was like, that's not you. You don't want to treat someone like you love. No, you're a lover, and I've had to eat that humble pie and learn from my own personal awareness and realize, just like you, no, just because that's what I saw, just because that's what happened to me, that's all the more I'm going to be a change. I'm going to be a difference. I'm going to inspire others. I'm going to support others. And I'm going to
Amen.
do that because I'm going to do it for my own self and
Yes.
embody it, and therefore be able to let that spillage, that stuff that spills into everything in your life when you're doing good, I'm going
Mhm.
to let that infect the people I love. And
Yes.
that makes all the difference. I enjoy motherhood so much more. And like you had said at the beginning of our conversation, things that weren't celebrated because of where, I was feeling too when I was a young mom. They
Mhm.
are today. They're
Oh,
embellished.
isn't it amazing? I mean, when you step outside of that space that you're in and go, oh, wow, it was okay to celebrate that moment.
Absolutely.
I made myself feel that way.
Yeah.
It's okay to celebrate your growth too.
Yes.
And I think it's so important to recognize how far you've come in your journey.
And
And
that's,
even
I
the
think, what
tiniest,
forgiveness is.
yes. And I
I
tell
think that's
the
what
girls
forgiveness is.
that beautiful moment where even if it's the tiniest thing that you give yourself grace for, and
Yes.
then you let it grow, and then you let it grow, and you feed that forgiveness to yourself. And then
And
you
a lot of
shoot.
people think forgiveness is, letting someone off the hook. And I always say, no, no, no. Forgiveness
Oh,
is not saying what happened is okay.
that's right.
It's forgiving yourself from that attachment
Yes.
and having compassion for the pain that person must truly be in, that they're behaving that way. And
And for me,
knowing that it has nothing to do with you and you don't
yes.
need to be a part of it.
And
You
for
can
me,
forgive yourself from that.
yes,
Release
it's
yourself.
continuing. You rob yourself of joy continually, right? When you don't
Yes.
forgive. You take those moments that you could actually celebrate as self wins and you completely dismiss them as unimportant. And that's where you just have to celebrate the joys and give yourself permission to be happy. Because
Yeah.
I think so many times that I was so angry, and then I remind myself, nobody wants to be around that girl at the party. The one who's pissed off when she walks in the room because she's pissed off from something else and brings it with her everywhere she goes.
I
You
would
have
bring
this,
my fear everywhere. It was part of my outfit. Yeah.
yes. So for
It's
me,
the
it was a
worst
bad
accessory.
bullshit, right? And I'm going to bring
Yeah.
out this attitude and I'm going to do this and I'm going to get defensive and I'm going to put a shield and a wall up. But it was like, once I realized I didn't have to take that backpack with me anymore and I got to take it off and just go, I don't even want that anymore.
Yeah.
That's not me. That's not who I am. I want people to leave a conversation feeling light and good and that they enjoyed our time together, not going, oh, that was heavy and a lot.
I look at pictures of myself just 5 years ago when I was really in the thick of some things. I don't even look the same. I
Yes.
don't even look the same. My
Isn't it
body is
amazing?
like my face, like I just looked so I looked sad. I looked in fear.
Yes.
I looked like
Yes.
the wrath of death. And
Yes.
I was trying so hard to not, but you could see it in every bit of my being. It was
Yes.
what I was radiating. I was radiating so much fear and shame and guilt
Yes.
um
Yes.
and because I hadn't returned all of those tools in my shopping bag that I was using to cope with life with,
I love your analogy.
I was heavy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So when you talk about you don't want to bring that to the party,
No.
so to speak, but I was heavy. I was always carrying around this heaviness. And
Yes.
as I started to the very first page in my book is called Belief Systems. And it really talks about going through the things that you currently believe and checking in and realizing, are they your beliefs? Like, do you believe in that because you experience it, or do you believe in that because someone gave you that as a tool?
That's right.
And one of the biggest things that we do in, the practice during the book is return things. Just like standing in line at Costco with all those gifts that how many times we get gifts at Christmas or our birthdays and we're like, oh, thanks. Thank you. You're the best. I love you. And you're like, when am I ever going to wear these bunny earrings? Like,
Right.
and I'm
Sure.
being silly, but sometimes, you get things and you're like, and you appreciate it, right? How thoughtful.
Of course you
But
do.
if they don't fit and you keep them, you have a house full of stuff that isn't you,
That's right.
right? So at some point, you've got to be able to say, oh, no, thank you. This was so kind, but
Yes.
this is yours.
Yes.
Thanks. No, 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 you keep that. No, 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 you keep it. That's yours. No, thanks. No, I don't want it. You keep it. That's yours.
Oh boy.
And truly, and spending time giving back things that didn't belong, that was a whole lesson in forgiveness.
Yes.
And not
Yes.
being mad at people for giving me that shit, but really just realizing they were only doing the best they could.
That's right.
And just like I was at certain points in my life, I wasn't, always as good as I am today, so to
Mhm.
speak. And I'm sure in years to come, I'll be even better. That's the goal. Right. But we do as good as we have. We offer as much as we have based on what we're cooking with.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, as I returned things and I started to wear outfits that were me, I realized that, wow, my skin looks softer.
Mm.
My My
Yeah.
idea of what fits or feels good is different.
Yes.
I don't wear things and not just about clothes or shoes, but I
No,
don't wear emotions or discomfort anymore. I just don't. And
it
if that
doesn't.
means I need to go for a long walk to get rid of it, or I need to take a long nap, or get away for a couple days, or go to church, or do some yoga, or spend time, with something that just feels good in that moment, I am relentless about getting into that space of feeling good
Yeah.
personally. Because
Yeah.
when I'm in that personal alignment, then I'm good. Then I know when I show up, I'm not offering a bunch of gifts to people that don't fit them either.
That's right.
I'm able to hold space and either not offer anything other than just presence,
Mm,
because we don't always have to give stuff to people,
that's
right?
right.
We can just hold space and listen.
That's
And
right.
being present is enough. And boy, it took me a long, long time to understand some of those things. And you know what I'm enjoying the most is in understanding this today, I've attracted the right people in my life.
That's so.
I've attracted people that don't have great pasts. They've got
Mhm.
some stories, but it's because of their stories they are who they are today.
Yes.
And we are creating and feeding healthy relationships. And so for me, what I've learned the most important in being in my truth is that I attract others that are in their truth.
Mhm.
And I might not necessarily always, sometimes when you hear people's truths, you're like, oh, but it's easier to hear people's truths from an authentic space than it is to feel someone's truth from a
Mhm.
fight in an abusive cycle.
Sure.
Because when someone is showing up in a guarded, masked truth,
Mm.
shooting all their weapons, blowing all the bullets out, that's painful. That hurts in ways that leaves scars and problems and wounds that we then have to heal more and more and more of. But
Mhm.
when you are in your truth and you have boundaries
Yes.
and you're right and you're wearing your authenticity, you're attracting others that are doing the same. And so when people like you and I speak, we're not entering the parties with our fears.
Mm.
You and I didn't come here wearing our backpacks of shit.
That's right.
We came as beautiful women in our truth to be really honest about some things that have happened in our life. And
Mhm.
I don't think that you and I will ever show up any differently. We've always shown up in each other's life that way because that's the power of becoming and becoming the kinds of survivors that we've chosen to be. We're
Yes.
not perhaps your dad or my parents who are surviving life still in fear,
Mm.
eating that abusive cycle because
Yeah.
they're unwilling to be in their truth.
Yes.
We show up as life as survivors that have chosen to not just survive life, not just survive, but to create massive change, shift, and
Mm.
impact by simply being who we are in our truth
Yes.
without forcing it down anyone else's throat. But by knowing that when we're that way, we're spilling that love and that light and that authenticity, that comfortability. We're spilling that and infecting our children, our partners, our careers. And the results that we're seeing are what? They're beautiful. They're
Mm.
inspired. They're things called success.
Yes.
And that is what I'm so grateful for in my life is knowing that in becoming this space of truth for myself, I don't attract toxic relationships anymore. I attract people like you that are also in your truth, that are attracting healthy, successful relationships that feed healing. So
Amen to that, sister.
thank you for being part of that. Um, I don't know. I think we should just say a prayer on that one and wrap that container up in this love. You ready for that?
Oh,
Do that?
yes. Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's just take a moment to close our eyes and just let God continue to marinate all of that truth with his love and his light. I am so grateful for the ability to stand in this light with truth and to know that it attracts beautiful souls that are also in their truth and in their light. And to know that together we are led by God in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful journey of healing that is creating shifts of change, changing the language, creating boundaries that set the tone for healing and the essence of security, feeling confident that we are enough, that we are empowered, and that we are loved. Let's take a breath into that space. And as we exhale, release anything that no longer serves us and feed the joy in our hearts that is now. Thank you so much, Miss Courtney. Thank you for showing up today in your truth and sharing with us a little more each time. I'm so grateful for your light and your energy.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. I just love you so much. I appreciate being part of this journey.
I really want to just leave with this for you and I, but for all that are listening. You know, wherever you are in your day, I hope that you observe yourself in conversations, just like you did your parents when you were little. But I hope today, when your little girl inside of you sees and listens, that you are so proud of what you're hearing and so proud of what you're seeing, and that encourages you to be more and more of that change and be more and more of that light. And I know that for me, if I could leave any legacy behind, it would to be to love and to love yourself so much that it makes it impossible for that fear to creep in and treat us any differently. What would
Amen.
what would be your gift, your one thing to leave behind today?
Just to honor exactly where you are in your space right now and know that there's no wrong way to approach how you heal because it is not one size fits all. It's very unique. And take an opportunity to even write down and acknowledge your feelings in that moment. And don't try to make it perfect or scripted. Just write freely about who you are in this very moment. And for me, I love to revisit those times. So just give yourself grace. Stop and think about where you are in your moment and just enjoy every opportunity you have to learn more about yourself.
That's right. Amen. Thank
Amen.
you so much for taking the time to start your day with me and to share a little bit of you with me and all of us as we speak easy with love. Because as you know, when we speak easy about some things that might feel hard, when we do it with love, anything can be said, and it can change what we're feeding our vortex, the energy that we are expanding within ourselves, and the energy that is affecting all the things in our life. So thank you so much for bringing your heart and your soul and your truth to this table today. Have a beautiful day, Courtney.
You
I'll
too.
see you. Bye.
Bye.